One man built an empire out of 18 different restaurant chains: Fatburger, Johnny Rockets, Round Table Pizza, Twin Peaks, and more than 2,200 locations spread across the world. In January 2026, the entire thing collapsed into bankruptcy. By June, almost every single brand had been sold off to the very lenders who accused the man running it of treating the company like his own personal piggy bank. Here's something most people don't know. This empire didn't start as an empire. It began with a single Fatburger location owned by a man named Andy Wiederhorn, who had already experienced a strange chapter in his life before any of this happened. Decades earlier, he was convicted of federal tax charges related to a previous business venture and served more than a year in federal prison. Most people would quietly retreat from the business world after something like that, but Wiederhorn did the opposite. He emerged, took control of Fatburger, and began building. In 2017, instead of going through a traditional Wall Street IPO, he chose a mini IPO, a simplified, lower-cost method to list shares with less scrutiny and fewer hurdles. This approach worked. Once Fat brands had access to public markets, Wiederhorn didn't stop at one brand. He started acquiring more. His first acquisitions included Ponderosa and Bonanza, two steakhouse chains often associated with family dinners. He then bought Johnny Rockets, the retro burger and milkshake chain, followed by Round Table Pizza, Fazoli's, and the steakhouse and sports bar chain, Twin Peaks, a deal worth hundreds of millions on its own. By the early 2020s, Fat Brands had acquired 18 separate restaurant chains, employing thousands of people across the country, all consolidated under a single corporate umbrella that many customers might not even recognize. So, how does one company acquire 18 others without having 18 companies worth of cash on hand? The answer lies in a financial tool called whole business securitization. This process is similar to taking out a mortgage, but instead of borrowing against a house, Fat Brands borrowed against the future revenue of an entire restaurant chain. They packaged the expected cash flow from thousands of locations and sold that as debt to investors. Between 2020 and 2021 alone, Fat Brands used this method to acquire nearly $900 million worth of restaurant chains. For a time, Wall Street embraced the story. Here was a small, agile holding company assembling an impressive portfolio of recognizable American brands, led by a colorful and outspoken founder, unafraid of taking substantial risks. Wiederhorn's strategy wasn't unique. It mirrored a familiar playbook in this sector of the restaurant industry. A few holding companies have employed the same securitization approach over the past decade to acquire numerous smaller chains simultaneously, betting that a more extensive portfolio would provide greater leverage with lenders, better bargaining power with suppliers, and greater resilience in weathering challenges faced by individual brands. When this strategy works, it can build an empire remarkably fast. However, when it fails, the very structure that allowed for such rapid growth can bring everything crashing down, as each brand under the umbrella becomes tied to the same enormous debt. Beneath the surface, significant events were unfolding. In 2022, federal investigators launched a fraud investigation into Wiederhorn and several other executives. The focus was on a $47 million loan the company had granted to Wiederhorn's personal holding company, which was later quietly forgiven. Facing pressure, Wiederhorn stepped down as CEO in 2023 while the case progressed. Then came an unexpected twist. In July 2025, the Department of Justice dropped all charges. There was no conviction and no plea deal. The case simply ended. 2 months later, in September 2025, Wiederhorn returned to the CEO position as if nothing had happened. He was back in charge of the same 18-brand empire, but now the debt looming over the company had not disappeared, and it was about to catch up with him quickly. The fundamental problem that the dropped charges couldn't resolve was the debt. All those securitization deals meant that Fat Brands owed over $1.5 billion. Critically, those loans were structured so that revenue from each brand's sales had to be directed toward paying down debt before reaching the franchisees and corporate teams managing the day-to-day operations of the restaurants. Court filings later described this arrangement as financing that effectively starved the business of the cash it needed to function. Same-store sales declined for 8 consecutive quarters. By October 2025, the company missed loan payments entirely. There was no room left for maneuvering. On January 27, 2026, Fat Brands and its Twin Peaks subsidiary filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, listing approximately $1.3 billion in debt. At that point, the situation became personal. A group of bondholders, the individuals Fat Brands owed money to, targeted Wiederhorn directly in court. Their filings claimed he had treated the company like his personal piggy bank, taking tens of millions of dollars in salary, bonuses, forgiven loans, and dividends for himself and his family, all while the brands under his leadership were struggling with debt. In March 2026, facing this pressure, Wiederhorn agreed to step down. His sons, who held senior positions within the company, were also fired, and most of the board members resigned. Despite the federal investigation, the bankruptcy filing, and accusations from bondholders of looting the company, Wiederhorn still walked away with a payout of up to $5 million. By June 2026, the bankruptcy auction was over. A group of lenders bought 13 of Fat Brands' restaurant concepts, including Fatburger, Johnny Rockets, and Round Table Pizza, for $595 million. Twin Peaks was sold separately to a group of franchise operators for $359 million. One brand, Smoky Bones, couldn't find a buyer at all. It's simply gone now, its location shut down for good, and the employees who worked there lost their jobs. So, what actually caused the downfall of Fat Brands? It wasn't due to bad burgers or bad pizza. Every one of the 18 brands still had real customers visiting their locations daily, ordering the same meals they always enjoyed. The real issue that led to the company's demise was its strategy of aggressively using debt for growth, borrowing heavily against an imaginary future to acquire present assets, until that future never materialized. The people who truly paid the price weren't the executives. It was the franchisees who invested their savings in stores that were deliberately starved of cash flow, and the employees at brands like Smoky Bones who lost their jobs with little media attention. The man who built this empire didn't lose his home or his freedom. He lost the company, yet he still walked away with millions of dollars in his pocket. Fat Brands isn't an isolated case. Several other restaurant holding companies have also utilized this very same debt-fueled roll-up strategy. They are now struggling under debt loads alarmingly similar to those that led to the downfall of Fat Brands. Rising interest rates suddenly made all that borrowed money more costly to manage, coinciding with a downturn in consumer spending on dining out. This combination, heavy securitized debt coupled with a weakening economy, created the pressure that transformed Fat Brands from a rapidly growing portfolio of well-known names into a bankruptcy filing in less than 2 years. If you want to understand how a company can own dozens of recognizable brands and still completely collapse, that's the key lesson here. Numerous well-known restaurant chains are currently hiding similar levels of debt. Subscribe for updates, as we're already investigating which one might be next. If you want to see more stories like this, about trusted brands hiding significant issues, leave a comment with the name of a restaurant chain you think we should look into next.